Last hurrah gone wrong. I wanted a wild trio before getting married, but didn't think this will happen. I had a threesome before my marriage just so I would never cheat on my fiancé after we got married. But all my plans backfired and my fiancé found out the truth and ruined my life. It really hurts me that this had to happen to me when all I really wanted was to avoid him finding out. I just wanted to safeguard our marriage by having all the wild fun before I finally had to commit. I really need you all to tell me where I went wrong. I, F29, am an accountant while my fiancé, Anthony, M31, is also an accountant. We don't work at the same place though. We just met through mutual friends. Surprisingly, Anthony and I just dated for 2.5 years before we decided to tie the knot. He proposed on my 29th birthday and I said yes. But the thing is, I never doubted my desire to get married to Anthony. I just doubted if I was ready for it or not. The time was what I had a problem with. Deep down, I just knew I had this debt of commitment. Don't get it twisted, please. I never cheated on Anthony all through our dating years. I was 100% committed to him. But it's common knowledge that the thought of marriage makes some people nervous. It's a universal thinking that once you're married, your legs have to be closed to other men forever. It was this particular thought that really brought up my nerves. I just couldn't imagine a life like that. I knew deep down that if I said no to getting married to Anthony immediately, there would be several women that were ready to steal him. And just like I stated earlier, I wanted to be with Anthony, but I just wasn't ready for that marriage part because it freaked me out a lot. You might want to ask, so why didn't you tell him about it? Hell no. Never in a million years would I have said what I really felt. He's 31 years old, for crying out loud. He's well-to-do and he has a stable job. I know many of his colleagues that don't hide their interest in him. I knew deep down that saying no would be foolish. So I said yes and decided to do things my way, and kind you, my way was just too immoral and sinful. But what could I do? I was scared of commitment and I thought I found the easy way out. Consequently, when it was exactly 2 weeks to our wedding, I got the worst cold feet ever. My mind was in a million places, and my thoughts kept drifting to life after marriage and the possibilities of being caged in the routine of a married woman. I hated those thoughts with everything in me, but I didn't try to suppress it either. I knew that if I couldn't fix things at that moment, it would be harder to fix it in the marriage. So I decided to seek the advice of an anonymous group on the internet. I had been a member of that group for over 5 years. The group mainly consisted of people asking for advice just like Reddit. They also do it anonymously, but the only difference is that there, people are advised to do crazy stuff, live life freely, and do that bad thing just once. I joined the group solely for entertainment, and I never imagined that I'd seek advice there one day. So I decided to be a daredevil and table my issues there. In less than 24 hours, I got many replies on what to do. There were a lot of crazy ideas, but the idea that really stood out for me was that of getting a threesome before I tied the knot. At first, I laughed at the thought, but when I noticed that almost a dozen people stated the same thing, I naturally started to imagine the thought of it. Of course, there were other ideas there that routinely made sense, but I was more drawn to the idea of having a crazy night before marriage. I would like to think that this particular idea stood out to me because I knew it would quench my taste in some way. I felt like it would kill two birds with one stone. First of all, I would have a crazy night to fantasize about any time I get bored in my marriage, and second of all, it wouldn't seem like I was missing out on anything because I would remind myself that I've done that crazy thing before. Perfect plan. It was literally the perfect plan for me. I was so excited that I thanked the other members and asked them to wish me good luck. Before the engagement, and even down to before getting married, Anthony and I never lived under the same roof. What I'm trying to say is that I never moved into his house. I did sleep over most times, but I never slept over more than 2 nights. So there was no way I would have gotten caught, and I know this because I analyzed everything ahead of time. I had my own apartment and Anthony had his own house. I didn't like the thought of that before, but when I decided to have a threesome, I was grateful that we had different homes. Now you might want to ask, where the hell did you get the men from? The group also assisted me with a site. It wasn't specifically like a dating site, it was more like a sure for who *ups. I got on the site, and after 3 days of scrolling through, I set a date to meet with the guys. I think I'll just call them my APs. So exactly 1 week before my wedding, I decided to meet up with them at a hotel. Apart from the anonymous group, no one else knew about my plans. Anthony had no clue what I planned to do. In fact, he was so busy with balancing work and our wedding preparations that there was no way he would even think I wanted to cheat. But to be honest, in my mind, I didn't really consider what I planned to do as cheating. Did I? It was just a harmless one last night of fun. So I bet you with the guys at the hotel and we did it. Yes, I didn't back down, and I shamelessly had the threesome with 3 total strangers. Yes, I used protection, and no, I never knew them before. It was just a platonic night. I didn't exchange numbers with them, though they did try to get my phone number. Up until that moment, we only communicated online. Not on WhatsApp, just on the site. I did that because I didn't want any complications. I've heard of so many stories of how nights like that ended up. The guys would get attached and would try to cause a scene, or the bride would foolishly cancel her wedding. There was no way in hell I planned on letting my marriage scatter because of 2 strangers I met online. But despite my desperate attempts to keep my marriage safe and okay, nothing worked. I mean, absolutely nothing worked, and all of my efforts actually backfired. Consequently, I did get my mind off the possibilities of being confined and bored in my marriage, but nothing got better for me. In fact, it felt like I unleashed problems in my life. I had to start fighting so hard to keep Anthony from finding out the truth. I also had to try my best to look innocent and act like nothing actually happened. It was definitely difficult, and trust me, nothing worked. I did tell you guys that many of Anthony's colleagues made their interest in him known, right? Well, guess what? I wasn't wrong. Those women are like ticks in my flesh. Anthony always tells me to ignore them, but I can't seem to do so. They were invited to the wedding even though I tried my best not to invite them. The thing is, Anthony invited all his colleagues to the wedding. I did too, but I couldn't help the thought of seeing those women. He has male colleagues too, but none of them give me the ick like the female ones. I'm stressing on them because they played a huge role in Anthony finding out the truth. Even though I had a hand in it, I swear that Jay was doing a great job of hiding if not for his stuck-up colleagues. So about 5 days to our wedding, we had a lot of events planned out. We booked a hotel for the full 5 days and the celebration started, literally. When I say celebration, I don't really mean extravagant things. Some were just simple dinners and games. Anthony and I were not stupid enough to spend a fortune on the wedding and end up broke after. So that's why we were smart enough to keep things modest and affordable. Unfortunately, Anthony and I had a big fight on the first night at the hotel. The thing is, the guys I had the threesome with kept on messaging me on the site repeatedly, even after I had warned them to stay away from me. So when I got a message from them again after trying to get rid of them over and over, I got pissed and left the room to go send them a voice note. Let me clear this up. Before I stormed out of the room, Anthony and I had been busy having a conversation. He had been stressed about a lot of things and wanted to speak to me about it. I was stressed too, and to be honest, I wasn't even listening to him. I just pretended to listen even though I was checking my phone every minute and typing replies. Anthony noticed this, unfortunately, and bounced out his anger immediately. He asked why I was multitasking and couldn't just drop the phone and listen to him. I tried to gaslight him by saying that I was stressed thinking about our wedding. I also blamed him for being stressed and accused him of inviting his female colleagues when he was fully aware that I didn't like them. Well, I know I was very wrong for doing that, but that was just me trying not to be in a bad position. I didn't want to get caught, and I did everything in my power not to raise any suspicions. I ended up apologizing to Anthony and promising to listen to him. I tried to do so for about 5 minutes before I got another frustrating text from the 2 guys. I just couldn't hold it any longer, so I got up and stormed out of the room with no date for what Anthony would think. In fact, at that moment, I forgot he was even in the room. You guys might try to judge me, but you cannot imagine how hard it is. Do you know how hard it is to hide something that big? I had a threesome without my finances knowledge, a threesome without him and without his consent. I just went on to do whatever I wanted. Of course, I was scared of the outcome and what he would think. I didn't even want to imagine what he was going to do to me or how he was going to cancel our wedding. I was beyond embarrassed, so I just got into my kind and forgot about everything that was going on around me. Anthony didn't take this lightly, guys. In fact, he was extremely angry. Do you know that I ended up ruining things for myself? I had no idea who was behind me or if anyone even listened to me when I angrily recorded those long voice notes and warning messages. I had no idea that Anthony followed me out, so I just kept on speaking without a line of thought. When I was done, I got the shock of my life. What do you think happened? Of course, my bad luck came for me again. Anthony was behind me and he heard everything I said. I swear that my soul left my body at that moment. I just couldn't believe that I had let my guard down in such a way. It really came as a shock to me. I won't lie. You would expect Anthony to get angry and cancel the wedding immediately, right? Well, that didn't happen. I didn't expect that he would just stand there and look at me. I thought he would start shouting, kicking, and just doing several things. But no, Anthony just turned back and left. I wasn't happy because I definitely knew that silence on such a situation was never a good idea. I did the best thing I could do, which was to run after him. Luckily, or rather unluckily for me, I didn't beg or say anything about the voice note. I just asked him why he followed me out. To my surprise, all Anthony did was scold me for leaving him in the room like that when he was pouring out his heart to me. He accused me of not being supportive and for being extremely nonchalant about our wedding. Let me just say that I had never been more relieved in my life like Jay was in that moment. I was excited, happy, and surprised at the same time. I could not believe that Anthony didn't hear what I said. I don't know if I was just being foolish or if I was just having on to the little hope I had. I guess you could say I was just trying to hide from the truth. I consoled myself by thinking that he must have not really heard anything and might have come at the end. I told myself that there was every possibility that he actually heard something, but couldn't understand what I was talking about. Another thing that gave me hope was his silence. I loved the fact that he was silent all through and didn't try to bring up any conversation. We slept that night without having any complete talks, and I was really relieved and happy about that. It just felt like I had won, and that I had nothing to worry about. I was also happy that I finally got to shut the guys up and warn them to stay far away from me. I just couldn't help but feel extremely happy. But what I didn't know was that I was being the biggest fool ever. Because by thinking that all was well, I let my guard down, and that's eventually how I got caught. I was so free the next day that one would think I just won the lottery. Yes, you're free to laugh at my stupidity because it's definitely not naivety. Nothing about what I did was naive, and the fact that I tried to gaslight Anthony instead of coming clean just shows how aware I was. I'm not the first to be so stupid, but I guess I'm the first to get caught and punished in the most embarrassing way. But Anthony still has some of Blake on his shoulders, though. You all needed to see how nonchalant he was. Jay didn't even act like someone who was aware his wife had a threesome. He went about life like he usually did and acted like he normally did with me. I, on the other hand, suddenly became present and interested in our marriage. From left to right, I was trying my best to act normal. I acted normal to the extent that I forgot all about what I did. And that was literally one of the biggest mistakes I made. Do you know that while I was just being nonchalant and acting like the most loyal wife, Anthony had been plotting his revenge behind my back? Do you know that while I was acting like a fool and making a fool of myself, Anthony was going around with his female colleagues and trying to find out if I really cheated? Now that I think about it, I feel like burying myself under the ground. You know that feeling of wanting the ground to open so you can enter? That's exactly how I feel. It's that feeling of shame and embarrassment and just knowing that you were just too stupid. I was parading myself around all the events as the bride-to-be, but behind me, I was being duped big time. First of all, Anthony and I already made an arrangement that he would cover 70% of the wedding expenses and I would cover 30%. I was supposed to pay for the first two events while he covered everything else. But then Anthony suddenly met up with me and asked me to use my card for the rest of the wedding events. According to him, he was having issues with his card, and he was also expecting a huge amount of money. He promised to return my money and even had interest in it. Of course, I said yes. First of all, I didn't doubt him because I knew Anthony's financial capabilities were nothing to play with. I knew he was financially capable to pay me back, and also as an accountant, I couldn't say no to the opportunity to get extra interest when being compensated. I didn't think he had any ulterior motives, and I foolishly gave my card and watched as all expenses were deducted from it. Unknown to me that it was Anthony's first move of revenge. If I had known, I would have never given that card to him. He basically ripped me up and made me pay for the whole wedding. I used my card to pay for everything. He did that on purpose. Let me just say this now. Even though I was definitely wrong in some ways, he played dirty by doing what he did, and I actually expected more from him. I am beyond hurt and ashamed right now. I have my faults, but him stopping that low is just worse. To think that I didn't find out about everything until the very end is even worse. You know how I spoke about his female colleagues being in on it? Well, this is why I said so. Apparently, after Anthony caught me that night recording those voice notes, he was confused about some details, like the name of the site and some words I used. One of his colleagues saw him eavesdropping and decided to meet him the next day. She also heard me that night, but decided to leave everything till the next day. She met up with him and affirmed that I was indeed cheating. She also told Anthony about the site and told him it was a popular site that people used to do all sorts of bad things. Anthony then decided to check my phone so that he could confirm and see things for himself. You guys remember when I said I let my guard down because I thought no one was going to catch me? Well, that ended up biting me in the back. I thought I was being so smart that there was absolutely no way I was going to get caught. It happened that I left my phone unattended one day and went to take a shower. Anthony then got into my phone and went through it. Don't ask how he did it because it's simple. He knows my password and I know his too. I just got comfortable because he had never tried to check my phone before. I never checked his phone out of nowhere either. We just had that kind of mutual trust for each other. So he checked my phone and saw everything because I didn't delete it and I left it all there. I know all these because he told me all these on text after he ruined my life. Instead of Anthony coming clean and telling me he caught me already, he just decided to plan his revenge. On the final day of our wedding, when we were supposed to finally tie the knot, I got embarrassed big time. The day I expected to be the best day of my life turned out to be the absolute worst day of my life. I got embarrassed. I'm from dozens of people and I became a laughingstock. Just like every bride does, I got ready and filled up. I've heard of husbands being stood up at weddings, but I've definitely not heard of brides being stood up. I waited behind the doors for nearly 30 minutes, but no one signaled me to come in. I got tired of waiting and so did my father. He was the one supposed to walk in with me. I got fed up and decided to walk in to see why there was a delay. When I peeped, I saw no one waiting at the altar. Only the priest was there. Anthony was nowhere to be found. It made no sense because he already messaged her that morning with the message, "I'm waiting already." I decided to call him but discovered that he blocked my number. Can you imagine the confusion? My fiancée to be blocked me on our wedding day. I tried to look for his friends, but they were all gone, even his colleagues. Only my side was left at the wedding. One by one, everyone got fed up and left. Anthony left me on our wedding day after dumping me. I was ashamed, embarrassed, and depressed. My family was embarrassed and disappointed because they just couldn't understand what suddenly happened. I cried myself to sleep that day because I was extremely angry. What's worse is the fact that I couldn't reach him. Exactly 2 weeks after I got embarrassed, Anthony unblocked me and sent me a lengthy message telling me how he found out about everything I did. He revealed everything to me and also told me I was his biggest mistake. He blocked me immediately after sending the message. I never even got my closure at the end of the day. Update. Like I said on the last update, I never got my closure. He just left me after dumping me. I basically paid for a wedding that never even happened. I spent all my money on something that ended up holding little to no value. Till this day, I'm still greatly embarrassed by the outcome of that day. I'm still frightened of public gatherings because Anthony basically ruined my life. Do you know how many people recognize me as the woman who got up on her wedding day? Going to work is torture because everyone knows my story. Anthony told everyone I had a threesome before our wedding. I'm even considering quitting my job because I just can't take the shame. I get that I did something terrible and he didn't want to marry me, but he should have just told me so. There was no reason for him to be this ruthless with me. He didn't have to wait till our wedding day so he could leave me standing at the altar. All he had to do was tell me secretly that it was over. There was no reason to dupe me and make me endure this public humiliation. But I guess that's what I get for being a cheater and gaslighter. Do you think I was wrong for preventing cheating in my marriage by cheating before marriage? Or why marriages get ruined by useless and small things? I mean, why get married if you're going to be insecure and get angry over small things? Even though I regret ever going to that party because it ruined a good and loving thing I had in my life. It took away the only person who had shown me nothing but true love. I would sometimes think to myself how I got here, in the position that I am in right now. I am left with nothing but regrets and sorrows. So my husband Moses, male 52, and I, female 45, first met in Ibiza in Spain on my 40th birthday celebration. My friends had asked me to let loose a little because I had been cooped up with work and barely enjoying my time. My husband was the host of the event that was happening in Ibiza, and it was a blast. I enjoyed every moment of it. I felt young and alive again. We started dating after 3 months of getting to know each other, and I was falling hard for him to a point that it looked dangerous because I would have a bad day and be in a bad mood if he didn't talk to me for like an hour. I think I was obsessed, but no, I wasn't. I was just feeling the guy on a deeper level that it was sometimes scary. I would think, what if he leaves me someday and finds someone else better, who would be on his level, and I would be left alone to pick up the broken pieces of my fragile heart. 7 months later, he proposed. Our relationship was ecstatic. He made sure to always make me feel special in every way. You know when someone makes you feel like you are the only important thing in his life, like you are the apple of their eyes? Well, that was what Moses made me feel. He was not ashamed or scared to show off his woman to his either friends or colleagues. He made sure to always make time for me. Even if he was busy or he would be hosting an event somewhere, he took me with him. I was the happiest and special woman on earth. Some of my friends had started distancing themselves from me. I didn't understand why they were not happy with my relationship with Moses. It really puzzled me because it was not like I had taken someone's boyfriend or crush and I had broken a girl's code. They were just not happy that I had finally found love and happiness. Some friends that we hang around with would surprise you sometimes. So Moses proposed and we got married 2 months later. Well, I had wanted a small and intimate wedding, but the guy had so many relatives, colleagues, and friends. So it was kind of a big wedding, but nonetheless, it was a great success and we were both happy. Our families were happy. Moses was the guy that most girls fantasize or dream to have in their lives, and I had that. We were so much happy and so much in love until we were not. Moses started distancing himself to a point that even if he was hosting an event, he was no longer going with me as we used to. As time went on, Moses had started being the boring person. I couldn't understand what was going on with him because if I would try and address the issue, he would just make an excuse about being under pressure at work. He was no longer spending much time at home. It was like I had become his housemate because in the morning we would both go to work. Well, more like he would go to work very early in the morning, then I would be left behind and go around 8. And when it was time to knock off, I would be in the house earlier than him as he had recently started coming back home late at night. My husband Moses was a good man, but he was also boring. Well, he had started being a very serious and boring person, 6 months after our wedding. If he was free and not working, he would either go to friends or watch TV or play video games and invite his friends over. He was not giving me his time and attention anymore. The thought of him cheating on me and finding someone better than me came across my mind, but I would put the thoughts away and console myself by convincing my heart that Moses loved me enough and a lot for him to just cheat on me. I thought he was going to change, I had faith in our relationship and marriage. The change he made was very huge to a point that he never wanted to go out and explore new things with me like we used to anymore. And he never made me feel like I was the center of his universe. It was a lot and it was hurting me a lot. I couldn't even address the issue that we were facing anymore because I knew what his excuse would be, so it was no use trying to find the cause or the root of our problems. Time went by and his ongoing and unending trips got to me and it affected our relationship. And even our intimate moments were no longer the same. You know the pain of being an intimacy addict, but your partner is nowhere to be found and you are forced to help yourself at times. I got tired of helping myself. I needed my man, but he was not there. Even when he was around, he was always tired. We would go for just one round and that was it. He was sexually making me hungry and I didn't want to go and seek it outside our relationship, but I missed the intimacy, the touches, kissing and all that. I didn't want it to end with me going outside our relationship and committing something that would jeopardize my relationship with Moses. I had tried so many times to seduce Moses, but he was just not giving in. I remember one day when he was coming from Africa, when he had gone with his work, I prepared him a very nice dinner and prepared myself to give him a mind-blowing welcome home. I tried making him look at the sexy number that I was wearing, but the dude just slept. Yes, I loved and still love Moses a lot, but sometimes love alone is just not good enough. Love needs attention, time, and perseverance, and to be sure that you are both in it. Imagine being in love or staying in love with someone hoping that they would change their bad behavior and would eventually give you the attention that you need. So you end up being patient and decide to pull up with the bullsh asterisk that your partner is doing. Some end up losing themselves while doing that, and I refused to lose myself while waiting for Moses to change. I decided to also change and go back to my old self that was stress-free, carefree, and lived her life like it's the last day. I had told myself that I would start by going to do some shopping. After I had finished with shopping, I would go on solo dates and maybe visit nightclubs just to unwind and let loose a little. I still remember the night like it was yesterday. The music was pulsating, the lights were flashing, and the crowd was electric. I was dancing with my friends, letting loose and having the time of my life. That's when I saw him, tall, dark, and handsome, with piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through me. We locked eyes, and I knew I was in trouble. We danced together, our bodies swaying to the rhythm, our hands touching and our lips grazing. The next thing I knew, we were making out in the corner of the club, our passion igniting like a wildfire. We exchanged numbers, and before I knew it, we were sneaking out of the club hand in hand, ready to take on the night. The memories of that night are still etched in my mind. The way he held me, the way he kissed me, the way he made me feel like I was the only woman in the world. It was a night I would never forget, a night that would change my life forever. The next morning, I woke up in his arms feeling like a queen. We made love again, slow and gentle this time, our bodies entwined like we were one. As we lay there, basking in the afterglow, he noticed something on my neck. A small purplish mark, a hickey from our passionate encounter the night before. He smiled, his eyes gleaming with pride, and whispered, "You're mine now." I blushed, feeling a flutter in my chest. Little did I know that moment would be the beginning of the end of my marriage. We were in our moment, and it was great. The guy explored my whole body like he was exploring his favorite country. He was like a drug in my body. My body was giving in to every touch that he was doing, every sweet word that he was saying, to the commands that he was making. The intimate moment that I had with Bruce was on another level. He made sure that I was satisfied with every action that he was taking. The intimate moment was, I don't know how I can put it, but I think it would be magical, because it was truly and unbelievably magical. It was something that I had long desired that my husband had been failing to do the whole time. Imagine going on intimacy hunger for over 3 months because your man is busy making excuses when you try to make him meet your desires and cravings. When I finally had some intimacy with Bruce, I felt like I had some sort of a web in my private area and it had dust. That's how much I had last had such a mind-blowing lovemaking, even though it's from a one-night stand, but it still counts, right? As I got dressed to leave, he walked me to the door, his hand on the small of my back. "I'll call you soon," he whispered, his lips brushing against my ear. I nodded, feeling a thrill run through me. I made my way home, my mind replaying the events of the night before. I couldn't believe what had happened. I was married, for crying out loud. I had a husband, a home, a life. But at that moment, none of that seemed to matter. When I got home, my husband John was in the kitchen making breakfast. He looked up as I walked in, a hint of concern in his eyes. "Hey, where were you last night? You didn't come home until really late." I hesitated, trying to come up with an excuse. "I was out with the girls from work. We went to a movie and then grabbed drinks." John nodded, seemingly accepting my explanation. But as we sat down to eat, I couldn't shake the feeling that he knew something was off. The days that followed were a blur. I went through the motions of my daily routine, but my mind was elsewhere. I couldn't stop thinking about the stranger from the club, wondering when I would see him again. And then one night he called. We met at a hotel downtown, our passion reigniting like a wildfire. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't help myself. I was addicted to the rush of adrenaline, the thrill of the forbidden. As the weeks went by, my affair continued, secret meetings and stolen moments whenever we could. Moses and I were growing further apart, the distance between us palpable. One morning, as we were getting ready for work, Moses caught my eye in the mirror. "What's going on, Sarah? You've been distant lately, and I can tell something's wrong." I tried to brush it off, but he saw right through me. "Sarah, I know you're having an affair. I can see it in your eyes." My world came crashing down. I knew I had been living a lie, but I had never intended to hurt Moses. I loved him, or at least I thought I did. Moses's eyes were filled with a deep sadness, a mixture of hurt and betrayal. I couldn't bear to look at him, knowing that I had caused him so much pain. "Who is it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated, unsure of what to say. I didn't want to hurt him any more than I already had. "Just someone I met at the club," I replied, trying to downplay the situation. Moses shook his head, his eyes welling up with tears. "I thought we had something real, Sarah. I thought we were happy." I felt a pang of guilt, knowing that I had been living a lie. We had been happy once, but I had let my desires and impulses tear us apart. "We were happy, Moses," I said, trying to reassure him. "But I made a mistake. I'm sorry." Moses nodded, his eyes never leaving mine. "I want a divorce, Sarah. I can't keep living like this, wondering when you'll slip up again." I felt a lump form in my throat as I realized the gravity of my actions. I had lost the man I loved, the man I had promised to spend the rest of my life with. The days that followed were a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and tears. We divided our belongings, our friends, and our lives. I was left alone, wondering how I had let things go so far. As I looked around my empty apartment, I realized that I had lost more than just my marriage. I had lost myself. I had lost the woman I used to be, the woman who was happy and content with her life. I thought about the stranger from the club, the one who had started it all. I wondered if he was thinking about me, if he knew the destruction he had caused. But deep down, I knew it wasn't his fault. It was mine. I was the one who had made the choices, who had thrown away my marriage and my happiness for a fleeting moment of passion. The months that followed were dark and lonely. I struggled to find meaning in my life, to fill the void that Moses had left. I threw myself into my work, taking on extra projects and responsibilities, but even that couldn't distract me from the pain. He asked how I could cheat with his childhood bully. and if I had known the damage and satisfaction that I had caused just by sleeping with his enemy. I told that I didn't know and I was sorry. He then got really angry and told me that he cannot be under the same roof as me because I have shown that I was untrustworthy, and he didn't know what I would do to him while he was sleeping if I knew how to open my legs for his sworn enemy. I was so heartbroken and shuddered by each and every word that he was uttering to me. Sure, I had done him wrong in the worst way possible, but how could he say such hurtful things to me? I don't even want to mention the part where he called me a body seller and told me that I would murder him someday because I was untrustworthy. Well, those words hit deep, and I don't even think that I would ever move on from them. They tore my heart into small, unfixable pieces. Later on that day, after he had said a lot of hurtful and harsh words, he told me that he wanted nothing to do with me and I should go back and enjoy Bruce's D***** because I am no longer his wife. That was the last straw. I begged him while kicking and crying. I didn't want him to leave me. I was regretting everything that I had done, and I couldn't believe that Bruce would actually send Moses such a video, then post it on TikTok. Imagine going viral for the bad and nasty thing. My reputation and self-dignity was shuttered. Moses left the house and went wherever he went. I was so heartbroken I would cry myself to sleep every day. I lost appetite and even the energy to go on. I felt like my whole world had crushed on me. The only thing that had kept me going and made me able to sleep was a bottle of whiskey and vodka. I didn't want any wine or whatever that wasn't strong. I wanted no one to come and try to see me or feel pity for me. The way I was so depressed and hurt, one would swear I had lost my mind. I stayed indoors and never opened for anyone that was knocking. I was grieving my relationship and it was painful. Up until a few weeks later, I decided to stop feeling sorry for myself. I had thought I had moved on and forgave everyone, but I was fooling myself. So I tried going to the mall to get some air, but as I was still at the mall, I fainted and woke up in the hospital. The doctor told me that I was dehydrated and depressed and referred me to the therapist. My mother was so worried and disappointed in me, and I didn't blame her. So I started therapy, which I'm still attending even today. And I would say that it is helping me a bit, but I don't think I will move on from Moses anytime soon. A few months later, I started seeing the stranger from the club again, hoping that he could fill the emptiness inside me. But he was just a temporary fix, a band-aid on a bullet wound. One night, as we lay in bed together, he turned to me and said, "I have something to tell you." My heart skipped a beat as I wondered what he could possibly say to make things worse. "I'm married," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've been married for 5 years and I have 2 kids." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Why did you lie to me?" I asked, my voice shaking with anger and hurt. He shrugged, his eyes avoiding mine. "I didn't want to lose you. I wanted to keep seeing you, and I knew if you knew the truth, you would leave me." I got out of bed, my mind racing with thoughts of betrayal and deception. I felt like I had been living in a dream that had just been shattered. I left him that night knowing that I deserved better. I deserved someone who would love me for who I was, not someone who would lie to me and use me for their own pleasure. As I walked out of the hotel room, I felt a sense of freedom wash over me. I was finally free from the toxic relationships that had been holding me back. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to start over. I was ready to find myself again, to find happiness and love on my own terms. I took a deep breath and stepped out into the unknown. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to start fresh. I started by focusing on myself, taking time to reflect on my actions and my choices. I realized that I had been living in a state of denial, ignoring the signs and symptoms of my unhappy marriage and my unfulfilling life. I started therapy, working through my emotions and my past. I learned to forgive myself and others, and to let go of the guilt and shame that had been holding me back. I started taking care of my physical and mental health, exercising regularly and practicing mindfulness. Slowly but surely, I started to feel like myself again. I started to see the world in a new light, to appreciate the beauty and wonder of life. I started to make new friends, people who supported and encouraged me on my journey. And then one day I met him. His name was Alex, my new man, and he was kind, gentle, and compassionate. He was a listener, a problem solver, and a partner. He was everything that I had been missing in my life. We started dating slowly and cautiously. We took our time getting to know each other, sharing our stories and our dreams. We laughed and cried together, supporting each other through the ups and downs of life. As we sat on the beach watching the sunset on our 1-year anniversary, I knew that I had found my soulmate. I knew that I had found the love and happiness that I had been searching for all along. "I love you," I said, turning to Alex with tears in my eyes. "I love you too," he replied, smiling and taking my hand. We sat there in silence, watching the stars twinkle to life in the night sky. We knew that we had a long journey ahead of us, but we were ready. We were ready to face whatever life threw our way, as long as we had each other. We built a life together, Alex and I. We traveled, explored new places, and built a home filled with love and laughter. We supported each other's dreams and goals, and we lifted each other up when the road got rough. I finally found the happiness and fulfillment that I had been searching for all along. I finally found a love that was true, pure, and unconditional. As I looked into Alex's eyes, I knew that I had made the right choice. I knew that I had found my soulmate, my partner, and my best friend. We got married on a beautiful summer day, surrounded by our friends and family. We exchanged vows, promising to love and cherish each other for the rest of our lives. And as we danced at the reception, I felt like I was floating on air. I felt like I was home, like I had finally found my place in the world. I knew that life would still have its ups and downs, its twists and turns. But I knew that with Alex by my side, I could face anything. We built a life filled with love, laughter, and adventure. We built a life that was ours, a life that we could call our own. And as we sat on the porch holding hands and watching the sunset, I knew that I had finally found my happily ever after. I learned that sometimes it takes a little heartbreak and a lot of courage to find your true love. But it's worth it every step of the way. I learned that true love is patient, kind, and unconditional. It's the kind of love that lifts you up, that supports you, and that makes you feel like you're home. And I learned that sometimes it's okay to take a chance, to take a leap of faith, and to follow your heart. Because sometimes that's where you'll find your true love, your soulmate, and your happily ever after.